Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, July 18th developers call for Jupyter IPython. I've put a link in the chat to the notes on Dropbox paper where where we have an agenda and you can follow along and see everyone's notes by topic. The first section of those notes includes links to where you can get news by the different organizations or parts of Jupyter. And I think Matthias is possibly traveling unless he's joined the call since I last looked. It doesn't look like it. So unless anyone has any IPython updates, we will go ahead and move on to M's update on NB Convert.
Okay, so it's been a while since unless there is a thing.
What's that?
Oh, sorry, I realized that I heard my name, but you said we should wait until after that
Oh,
before deciding to just
that's
move along.
that's okay. I figured someone would interrupt you if they really wanted to give an IPython update, and it doesn't sound like they do. So go ahead.
All right, so it's been a while, so there have been a lot of things. In terms of the stuff that I'm working on now that I could use some input and feedback on, I was at SciPy last week. It was a really great time and got to talk to a lot of people about their notebook conversion uses. And one of the things that just keeps coming up is the challenge of dealing with custom templates. And right now, our sort of story behind that is if you want to be able to make that easily available, you might as well just write an entire package or at least an exporter. And that is a kind of a big ask for people who say just want to change the way that something is formatted. So I want to figure out a better way to surface that for people who just want to have their like to be able to define a different output format. And one of the things that I was thinking about was having sort of a global directory underneath the .jupyter subdirectory, possibly .jupyter .jupyter / templates, and then people can just dump stuff in there. It can be part of all the default conversion utilities, and so it's just like a magic directory that people can use. If I'm going to do that, I want to probably use the exact same mechanisms that we use elsewhere to create that directory so that it's just common across all of the cases where upon install, if something doesn't exist, then we create it and it has a special meaning. And I wasn't sure if that was documented anywhere. So if anyone knows that and wanted to point me to the right place, that'd be great. Does anyone? Okay, I'll keep searching. And then some of the other things that I've been working on are tag-based element filtering. We talked about this at the dev meeting or the team meeting, and there are some outstanding issues on how exactly to handle that because we sort of would want it to be output agnostic. But at the same time, the output agnostic format or the only output agnostic sort of transformations that we have involve doing notebook to notebook transformations. And if you want to actually remove elements from a document, then if that includes inputs, that creates an invalid notebook um, uh, because you can't have an output without an input from the perspective of NB format. And at least in talking to people, they objected to changing that idea. So I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do that. Let's see. Done a big deep dive into how our Markdown HTML block handling is happening. And there seems to be some interesting bugs in Mistune that relate to its assumptions about the number of new lines between blocks of code. It's ambiguous in the actual specs, sort of how exactly it should be interpreted, especially from the perspective of there are a lot of things in marked that just may or may not be normative according to those specs. And I wasn't sure if our policy should be notebook. If the notebook has a feature, then we want the converted HTML of a notebook to render in the same way for all the Markdown cells? If so, then we're going to need to probably make changes to that in order to make it happen. Some pretty substantial changes. And if we don't want to do that, then I think we should have a policy. There have been issues that have been open about whether we should be normative or try to keep everything the same, possibly even including deprecating notebook-based rendering features if they are not like on spec or in a consistent with other things. Those have gone back since basically the beginning of the big split, those issues. So I wasn't sure about that. I have a bunch of PRs that are open on a bunch of different things. Some of them are related to MathJax. Some of them are related to more of this block handling stuff. There's just a lot of things that are still like up in the air, and I could use some code reviews on those because I don't want to merge them myself. A lot of other things are just more detail-oriented stuff. And yeah, so if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, comments, I'm happy to take them and happy to receive any sort of guidance on this, including just a code review.
Okay, thanks, Em. I think we have Jessica, if you're ready to share updates on documentation, you're next.
Yep. Hi. Okay, so following up from the recent talks at SciPy and at PyData Seattle, I'm soliciting feedback from speakers so that we can, at least get an understanding of what we can include, what sort of changes we need, or just general information we should know about for future reference. In addition, I'm trying to prepare a write-up largely based off of the talk from PyData Seattle. Oh, great. And we have the link for the SciPy Lightning talk. So I'm going to put those two together. I'm still waiting for getting the content that Jason ended up using in his Lightning talk. And we need to also, I have also basically pinned down all the content we currently have in the repo that is external and where they came from, but we need to figure out what we want to do with content that doesn't have a license specifically listed. So that's something we should figure out because we should be including those licenses in our own license. And then additionally, Jupyter Lab and Jupyter Lab extensions are now topics on GitHub. I've just started to tag the Jupyter Lab organization with those topics, and I will be encouraging other repos to be using those tags, those topics as well. And I think that's mostly it. I'll be talking with more members of the team about additional steps we should get ready with the demo for the release, and that's kind of where I am right now.
I was muted. Thanks, Jessica. I see that Grant is not on the call, so I'm going to skip over the notebook unless anyone else has anything to share on that. Go ahead and jump in if you do. Looks like we have Jupyter Lab next. Steve, Darian, not sure who's giving the update.
I'll go. So the ongoing work that we've talked about a few times now with the new data flow pattern, the Redux pattern. So where we are now is that we're taking it to basically the last point where one-way data flow makes sense. But if you conceptually think about the way a text editor works, it's constantly reading and writing to a data store, and it can't really be the case that every time you press, say, the K key, it does this full circle around your entire app to post the data, then everything reads and re-renders. because basically you can't have a text editor constantly re-rendering with this pattern. It would just be, it would have to have been implemented from the ground up to basically be some sort of virtual DOM or something that offloads most of that work. But it's not. We're using off-the-shelf components for this. So what we've done is basically that last mile, we're taking the things that our data store holds and listening to a change event that can be told to at each step, at each part of the tree. You can say, I want to subscribe to change events on this part of the tree and down. So that way we get around one of the primary issues we had, which was just a proliferation of signal connections, but we also keep a sane model for how to have a text editor without building one from scratch ourselves on this pattern. So that's one thing that's ongoing. The settings system now has both a UI and a backend API, so it's actually serving live files. And that means when you install your extensions, you can write a schema, and as long as you tell, you put in your package JSON in your JupyterLab metadata where to look for schemas, that will be put in, and your defaults will be applicable, so that now we have just the canonical way for having a bunch of setting presets and allowing users to override them as they wish. And you don't have to write a settings UI for your own extension if you don't want. Obviously, if you have a special extension that has some, say you want to put a color picker or something and save that to settings, you can do that. There's APIs for that. But as a sort of lowest common denominator API, there's a setting editor that's global. And so that's out in master now. The other thing about settings is the UI. We've done a lot of thinking and talking about how to deal with just discoverability of the settings, and also just to take away some of the pain points. This came up because now all of the keyboard shortcuts are settings, so you can go modify them to be whatever you like, which I think a lot of people have asked for. But there's a lot of keyboard shortcuts, and the current UI doesn't really make it easily discoverable what their values are, doesn't make it easy to paste them all in and modify them. So the next set of UI upgrades is going to take away some of that pain, not add new functionality necessarily, or rather it'll add new functionality in that you can click and get a bunch of stuff done, but it won't add anything that wasn't available before. It'll just make it easier. Let's see. I don't know what the FASTA third-party plugin is about, so Jason can talk about that. And it looks like the typography work, maybe Brian can talk about that. And also the Electron app. So is Jason on the call right now?
Yeah. Just real briefly, Zach Saylor, one of Brian's former students who's working in biology, sat down at Jupyter at SciPy and said it'd be fun to have a FASTA viewer. And so we found one online and implemented it using the new MindRender extension mechanism, which turned out to be really pretty nice. Anyway, the repo's there and works great.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, I guess Brian, Ian, and Grant may also have things they want to contribute.
Yeah, so we're doing ongoing typography and design work coming up to the beta, spending a little bit of time looking at our typography. This is partially spawned by work on the Electron app, where the handling of default fonts is slightly different than browsers. And we're continuing to work on the new collapser, this sort of clickable sidebar to collapse code or output. And then we're struggling and have been for a few months with the design of the in-out prompts. Basically, how do we balance the information that the words in and out provide with a desire to simplify the design visually? And we're going back and forth and don't have any conclusions about that. Just continue to experiment. The JupyterLab Electron app is approaching a 0.1 release. It will have native menus, splash screen, auto start the notebook server, and then installers for Mac, Windows, and Linux. We're currently working with NumFocus on getting a basically an organizational Apple developer account, so we can do properly signed Mac applications. And then we've got another team of interns building a Git extension for Jupyter Lab. And the initial part of this is a NBE server extension that has a REST API for local Git operations. So this can be used actually outside of Jupyter Lab. The classic notebook could use this. We're getting to the point where we could start to solicit feedback on how we've spelled out Git operations over a REST API. We've been looking a lot at how GitHub does this, and it's fairly simple. And then we're getting an initial UI on top of that, but that should be getting to the usable phase fairly soon. There is talk about beginning to integrate the NBDime UI into this Git extension and allow NBDime to be used for managing diffing and merging notebooks in Jupyter Lab. We're just starting to think about that, but that's one thing that we would like to do.
That is super cool. That would make a much nicer UI than even GitHub can offer. That's great.
Yeah. And there's a new section here on the notebook format that I'm listed on. It's sort of related to NB-convert, sort of independent of that. And at the last team meeting, we began to discuss an effort to document our Markdown syntax that we sort of is part of the notebook specification. We have a repository in the Jupyter org called Jupyter_Markdown, and we can now auto-generate a notebook from the Common Mark spec that tests are compliant with that particular Markdown spec. And then those notebooks have a double % JavaScript cell that automates the comparison of how we render the Markdown with the intended rendering from the Common Mark spec. Unfortunately, the results are not very encouraging. I think, at least I was hoping that we would be sort of Common Mark minus epsilon, and that we could make some minor changes and be there. The reality is I forget the exact number, but our current conformance with the Common Mark spec in the classic notebook is maybe 60% or something. And this does get to some of the things that Em was talking about, the differences between marked and mistune. There's just a lot of gritty, dirty edge cases that are present in Markdown, and I think that outside of Common Mark, it's the Wild West. And so I don't know. I'm not even sure that our original plan of documenting the current Markdown syntax we support is a doable thing outside of simply saying, here's the part of Common Mark we support. There's so many edge cases. I don't like to give everyone I think the Common Mark spec has around 1,000 different examples. So we're generating 10 notebooks with each 100 cells. And what I'm saying is hundreds of those don't work.
Wow. The thing is that I think a lot of those ended up being closely related to each other, so we might be able to say which aspects of, like, even if it doesn't make sense to say we support these features, not these features, it might say these features are more or less well supported. Also, we should probably be, I need to run very shortly, but we should also test, we should also be doing the mistune version of this, because that similarly, we can't say that we follow the spec in either case unless we know that we're following it in both.
Yeah, so I'm not, the intern that was working on that is now focused on the Git extension, but there is the initial code in that repo, and we can, I think the student will have more time.
Is there a reason it needs to be private?
What's that?
Is there a reason it needs to be private?
Oh no, is that repo private?
Yep.
Oops. No. That's
Okay,
total.
great, because then I can start conversations there. And part of the reason I didn't is I wasn't sure to what extent that intern was continuing to work on it, since I haven't seen anything. And if it's a more open thing, I think a lot more people will have something to say and possibly to contribute.
Yep. That was. It is now public. Well,
Awesome.
never mind. Okay, it's now public. Sorry about that. I don't know why we made it private.
No worries.
But we'll need to continue to think about how we want to tackle this problem. That's it.
It's tough.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brian. Bye. And it looks like Jason has the next update on Jupyter widgets.
Yeah, just Sylvan might have something more else to say, but SciPy, we had a great tutorial with Matt, Craig, and Sylvan, and those videos should be up online. We had a Birds of Feather session later where we had lots of questions and lots of discussion. We had a lot of work on IPy widgets, and we released a beta last weekend. We had a few people also working on it on the sprint of SciPy. And now we're turning our attention, now that the beta's out, to the documentation, examples, and wider testing and fixing issues that people are finding.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jason. I don't think we're going to have an update on services. It doesn't look like Peter is on the call. So next, Min mentioned in the Gitter chat that he's not joining. So Carol, can you give an update on Jupyter Hub?
Yeah, actually, one of the interesting things that we've been doing over the past week is Yuvi's been working on some load testing scripts that we've been running, and we've run it for more than 1,000 users at this point in time, but not, that was really to figure out more like where the slowdowns happen. But it's running really well at 1,000 users for over 48 hours, so that's a great thing. And there's more stuff in the an issue and also on the Gitter channel. Not all of it has made it back into the issue, but we triaged everything within the Jupyter Hub repo in preparation for 0.8. And 0.8, we are planning on dropping Python 3.3 support, primarily because it's end of life, and really nobody should be using 3.3 at this point anyway. That's about it.
Hey, Carol, quick question. Just so I understand the 1,000 users. These are 1,000 simulated users by the load balancing testers, right? Not 1,000 live people. Okay, got it.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're already Python 3 only, so you've dropped Python 2 support.
There was never Python 2 support for Jupyter Hub.
You dropped it since the beginning. Got it. Okay, thanks.
Got it. No worries.
Okay. Anything else on Jupyter Hub before we move on? No.
I tried speaking earlier and I was muted. Right during the week at SciPy, there were like 3 widgets libraries that were released during the week. One is IPython, which is an image browser, like a browser for astronomy images. Another one is from Caltech, which is apparently something related to Arduino, and I didn't quite get what it was doing. And also a Visic, which is another visualization package. So 3 of them in the same week, like 3 new packages were released on the top of the widgets, which is pretty good.
Alrighty. Thanks, Sylvan. I will give the update for the next couple of sections on conferences and workshops. Please go ahead and keep adding events to that section that you're participating in or that you're speaking at. We have a couple of additions on the end there from Brian. Brian, are you speaking at either of those events, or you want to share anything about them with the community?
So we are giving a Jupyter Lab talk at Strata NYC in late September. I'm posting a link to ODSC. The ODSC conference is the Open Data Science Conference. I've given a talk there for the last 2 years. I'm unable to do that this year, but they are looking for Jupyter speakers. So if there's anyone who wants to do that, I really enjoyed that conference. It's fairly large, but they've done a really good job of emphasizing sort of open source aspects of data science. So there's that. And then PlotCon NYC in November is coming up. And
Okay.
I'll be giving a talk at that about Altair.
Cool. Alrighty, yeah, and I would encourage anyone else speaking at other conferences to share with the community and post links into this section. So somehow JupyterCon is almost 30 days away now, so it's coming up on us quickly. And if you haven't booked your flight yet, please go ahead and do that. I did want to give you guys the heads up that we'll be having a combined Jupyter and NumFocus booth at the conference, and we're just starting to figure out kind of what that will look like and what we'll present in that booth. So if you have ideas or anything that you want to share regarding that, please reach out to me and let me know. And did want to remind you guys about the sprints on Saturday. Kyle and Jason will be leading. I think Matthias set up an Eventbrite for that, so we can start getting an estimate of how many people might join for that. But we do have a space, so I would expect to hear more about that in the coming weeks. Anything else on JupyterCon?
I would say with the sprints, if you're interested in leading a sprint, for a particular project, Jupyter Hub, etc., please contact Kyle and me, and we'll put your name up as a leader. There's questions already coming in about what projects are going to be represented
The
there.
topics. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And then, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you keep me in the loop with regard to topics for the sprint? Because I feel as if I can probably help out the getting people up to speed and making sure that all the information that people need to know is available.
Sure. Yeah. Who's this? Jessica?
Hi, it's Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah, we can keep you in the loop.
Okay. Yeah. I'd like to at least know what people are doing just so that I can see what I can bring to the table. So yeah, great.
Okay, great. And then before we move on to the next section, I just wanted to call your attention to the releases section at the very end. I know some of it might be repetitive, but we have the notes, which are just good to have all in one place. There's what was released last week, planned releases for this week, and to be released soon. So if you have anything to add to those categories, please do that now. So just a few action items. Oh, I skipped over the team meeting. So we will have our team meeting on Monday and Tuesday after JupyterCon, and we have a location now, working on the final logistics of that. I did send out a calendar invite. If you receive that, please respond so that I can get a final head count. We have some logistics and other things to work through for the building, so I'm really needing to know this week whether or not you're planning to attend that meeting. And then some other reminders. Next week I will be taking some holiday time and be out on vacation, so I am needing someone to step in and take over the moderator role for next week's meeting. I'm not sure if you guys have talked about that, but if you are available to do that, please send me an email after the call and let me know, just so we can kind of check that off. Stacy at BIDS handles the recordings and posting onto YouTube, so it's just a matter of logging in and moderating the call and going through the agenda. So let me know who can fill in. Otherwise, whoever is happens to join the call gets to gets to take the lead. So it'd be good if you volunteered in advance, though. That'd be nice.
No, we'll take care of it from the Berkeley side. No worries.
Okay, all right, good. And let's see. So a few other reminders related to things I've sent out for logistics on hotel rooms for JupyterCon. If you have an email from me on this, please send me your check-in, check-out dates. And then it looks like some reminders from M. He's wanting help on some code reviews, so adding that to the checkoff list just as a reminder, it looks like. And Thomas joined the call. Thomas, do you want to talk about Notebook at all? Not sure if you're ready to chat or if I'm surprising you, but I see that you added a note there, so I wanted to see if you want to talk about that at all. And there is a chat, so no chat. Okay, maybe not. So that pretty much wraps up the meeting. Is there anything that anyone wants to talk about or share with the community that is not in the agenda anywhere? Now would be the time to do that before we log off.
I just wanted to give Thomas a shout out for his posting in the Jupyter and Education mailing list on the stuff he presented at IPython. It was really good and helpful information. So if people want to take a look at that, that's there.
Okay.
Yeah,
awesome.
I second that. I second that. Those threads were exceptionally useful. And Thomas, maybe next week, I'd love to hear if you have a little update on how the talk went and any interesting discussions that you may have had. Because I went through Thomas's slides, which were very nice, but it would be good to hear if there was any good discussion coming out of it.
Yeah, and it looks like, I'm not sure if you saw the post in the chat. Thomas writes that he's in a loud room, so he doesn't want to turn the audio on.
Got it. We can chat next week. We can chat next week. No worries.
Okay, it looks like that's it. It was great seeing everyone, and I will go ahead and log off now. Oh, and actually, my UI just froze. Tom or Ian, can you end the recording?